Good morning, good afternoon, my dear students. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about Lexico Syntactical stylistic devices. So, we're going to talk about the lexical meaning of word, denotative and the connotative meanings, interaction of direct and the transferred meanings, tropes, simile, definition and the structural peculiarities, metaphor, definitions and the semantic peculiarities, metaphor and the simile, simple and the extended metaphors, trite and the genuine metaphors. So, lexical meaning by Arnold. Word is a basic language unit which actualizes a concept through a certain form and expresses emotions and evolution. A polysemantic word is represented by a system of lexicosemantic variants, which constitute its semantic structure. Lexical meaning is an actualization of a concept, emotion, or evolution by means of a language system. The lexical meaning of each LSV forms a complex unity. Denotative and the connotative meanings. Denotative meaning denotes a concept and refers us to reality. Connotative meaning relates us to conditions and the participants of communication. Components are emotive, evaluative, expressive, stylistic components. Emotive components, evaluative, expressive components, and the stylistic. These components are optional. So, let's continue. Connotative components of meaning. Emotive components are word expresses an emotion and a feeling. For example, oh, wow, interjections that possess denotative meaning. I love you, honey. Evaluative component, a word conveys a positive or negative evaluation, approval or disapproval, firm positive, abstinate, disapproval, pig-headed, negative expressive, not easily influenced. So, expressive component. Expressive component, a word accentuated the concept it denotes. For example, life wasn't made merely to be slaved away. To slave, usually expressive connotation. Stylistic component, word is typical of certain spheres of communication and functional styles. For example, brief, poetic, meetings and archaic, narc, jargon, graph, slang. Direct and the figurative meanings. Lexical meaning can be also represented through the opposition of direct meaning and the figurative meaning. Nominative and transferred. Direct and figurative meanings. Direct meaning is actualized without context. For example, cold, wind, mountain. It was a cold fall and the wind came down from the mountains. Ernest Hemingway. Figurative meaning describes or characterizes an object by establishing its relationship with other objects and creates an image. For example, then, turning to my left, I said, the dead are dancing with the dead. The dust is bright whirling with the dust. Tropes. Tropes are lexicosemantic stylistic devices based on certain change, transposition of meaning, which results in creating an image. That means a word acquires a figurative meaning or additional connotations in a particular context, which coexist with the direct meaning. For example, what will this novel be about? Tropes and the metaphors. What are tropes when they are at home? All the things I can't tell straight. Types of tropes. Depending on the type of transposition of lexical meaning, we can single out the following tropes: simile, metaphor, personification and antonomatia, metonymy, synecdoche, allegory, epithet. Some scholars don't include this in the category of tropes. Simile aims at comparing two objects belonging to different classes of things and creating an artistic image otherwise. Comparison implies likeness between two objects belonging to one class. It doesn't result in vivid imagery. For example, he looks like his father, mother, grandpa. Comparison: he looks like a ghost, a devil, a prisoner who had just been released, a prisoner who's to serve a life sentence. Ways of expressing simile. Simile is always formally marked by conjunctions in the prepositions. For example, I feel as if I have been too well spun in a game of blinkings of buff. That absolutely normal silence, a silence like a scream. Suffixes like and wise. For example, everything that was happening had a dream-like quality. Special verbs resemble, remind of, and seem, look like, and other expressions. Everything is a kind of scream, if one wishes it, so an excuse for not understanding. Metaphor definitions. Life is like a dream. Life is a dream. Metaphor is a hidden simile which consists in applying the name of one object to another object. Metaphor denotes expressive renaming on the basis of similarity of two objects, the real object of speech and the one whose name is actually used. Culpable metaphor is a relation between the dictionary and the contextual logical meanings based on the affinity or similarity of certain properties or features of the two corresponding concepts. Many scholars and the stylistics think that both simile and metaphor are regionally based on likeness, similarity, analogy, and they define metaphor as a compressed simile with formal elements, like, as if, and etc. omitted. But there exist differences. Simile is always marked formally, metaphor never. Simile keeps two objects apart, and the metaphor aims at complete identification and is more expressive and categorical. It provides a sort of stereoscopic double vision. He is like a demon, he is a demon. Metaphor consisted in renaming an object and presupposes a more essential change of meaning. In fact, it creates likeness, similarity, analogy between two concepts. That's why metaphor is said to possess cognitive value. It is a powerful tool used to create new meanings in language. For example, to grasp, to see, to get, to understand. All the words are stage, and all the men and the woman they are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. Metaphor structural components. Even Richard singled out the following structural components of a metaphor: tenor, тема метафоры, the concept denoted by metaphor content, vehicle, оболочка, образные средства, the image used to denote the concept, the ground, основание для сравнения, the property that helps us see the analogy between two concepts. For example, Porphy's comes dropping slow, turfing from the veils of the morning. Structure classification of metaphors. Structural metaphors are subdivided into simple and prolonged, extended, развернутые и простые. Simple metaphors. Simple metaphors are expressed by one word or phrase. For example, you can't put out my flame. Sometime to hold the eye of heaven shines. Simple metaphors can be expressed by nouns, verbs, For example, the dust danced and was golden. Oscar Wilde. Adjectives: the human tide is rolling westward. Dickens. Adverbs: the leaves fell sorrowfully. Extended metaphors. An extended metaphor is represented by a chain of simple metaphors, creating one image and is actualized on the level of a sentence. Several sentences, paragraph, chapters. For example, Mr. Dombey's cup of satisfaction was so full at the moment that he felt he could afford a drop or two of its contents, even to sprinkle on the dust in the bypass of his little daughter. For example, in a cavern under its fettered the thunder. It struggles and howls at fits. Extended metaphors, for example, all the words a stage, and all the men and the women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. So you can see the extended metaphors such as the stage, players, exits and entrances, plays many parts. So, for example, мгновениями он виден, чаще скрыт, за нашей жизнью пристально следит. Бог нашей прямой коротает вечность, сам сочиняет, ставит и глядит. Мир я сравнил бы с шахматной доской, то день, то ночь, а пешками с тобой подвигают, притеснют и погибли, и в темный ящик сунут на покой. Подвигает, притеснуть и погибли, и в темный ящик сунут на покой. Classification of metaphor according to the degree of unexpectedness. Trite, genuine, heightened, original, ready-made, individual, сёртый, индивидуальный, yes. Title metaphor. Metaphor which are commonly used in speech and sometimes fixed in dictionaries. They belong to language as a system. For example, leg of a table, mouth of a river, needle's eye, bottle's neck, for example, a ray of hope, floods of tears, seeds of evil, a flight of imagination, to burn with desire. Trite metaphors can be divided in texts. For example, Mr. Pickwick bottled up, kept it checked. Bottled up means kept it checked. His vengeance and corked it down. By Dickens. So, genuine individual metaphors. Metaphors which are unexpected, occasional, and exist only in certain contexts and they require more mental effort to be deciphered. They belong to speech, language in action. Metaphor imposes on the reader subjective view of the object or phenomenon and its semantic ties. For example, England is a dying animal in a zoo. England is a dying animal in a zoo. So, my dear students, at home you must write down all this about metaphors, which is extended metaphors. What is extended metaphors, which is represented by a chain of simple metaphors, creating one image and it's actualized on the level of sentence. So you must write down about the simple metaphors and retelling all the text, structural classification of metaphors, prolonged, extended, simple metaphors. You can see all this divided into the simple and the prolonged metaphors and also simile. You're going to say about what's the simile and where you can find the simile actors. So simile aims at comparing two objects, yes, belonging to different classes of things and creating an interesting image as a result. So comparison implies likeness between two objects belonging to one class.